Razorback football has a big weekend for both portal visits, some commitments, and some updated coaching news on the defensive coordinator search. We'll talk about that as well as get into the Razorback basketball team getting revenge back on the Oklahoma Sooners and thoughts and prayers up to Mississippi State coach Mike Leach. It's all coming up on today's Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Nabors. I am also the host of Out of Bounds. You can catch every weekday afternoon from 1 to 4 on 103.7 The Buzz and 103.7thebuzz.com. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs, where they help you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Hope everybody had a wonderful weekend, as we know that with Razorback basketball going on, as well as the transition between the regular season and postseason for college football and the Razorbacks, with a lot of things going on with their football team, not only the roster, but also the coaching carousel for the defensive coordinator spot, as well as some other things going on. It's been pretty wild. It's been pretty wild to keep up with, and obviously a lot of fun for me because I actually enjoy this time of year where you just really don't know what to expect out of everybody and every team and who's going to do what. We only know what we know. And with Arkansas, there was some good news that happened over the weekend because we know that they had a big weekend for visits. And honestly, I've been pretty impressed so far with the type of players that have been coming in for visits. And also Arkansas was able to get commitments over the weekend for a couple of players that were really important. So first we'll start with the transfer portal and some guys that Arkansas was able to get in. And the first one is Jacolby Criswell, the quarterback, which I think most people kind of thought that this would happen, where he would be coming back home to Arkansas. He's originally from Morrilton and played over at North Carolina now for a few years. He was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school. He does have a little bit of experience over there when he played at North Carolina, but he did play as a true freshman in 6 games. And also in 2021, he played in 5 games where he threw for 179 yards and a touchdown, while also 68 yards on the ground. And then this past year, his time was pretty limited as he only played in 4 games and went 2 of 6 for 9 yards with 39 rushing yards. So I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you or pretend that adding Jacoby Criswell, suddenly you get a full-fledged quarterback competition in the spring where KJ could lose his job because this guy coming in is so good. And I don't think anybody needs to look at his stats there while he's at North Carolina and say, oh, well, this guy's trash. Why didn't we want him? He didn't even play, blah, 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 whatever. No, here's what it is, folks. You got to remember, quarterbacks that enter into the portal 9 times out of 10, 99% of the time, they're entering into the portal because they want to start, they want to play. All right. And so anytime that there is a high level quarterback that enters into the portal, guy with a lot of stats, a lot of numbers, whatever it may be, they are not transferring to a place to be a bench player, to be a backup. They're wanting to start. They're wanting to play. Right. So in this particular case, you get a backup quarterback in Criswell. He's not going to beat out KJ. KJ is going to be the starter. But I believe by getting Criswell, you have added in a player that is much better, much more improved, being in that backup role than what you would have this past year with Malik Hornsby and even Cade Fortin. I mean, again, I hope Criswell doesn't play a lot in this upcoming season because that means that KJ's healthy, KJ's really good, and KJ's doing his thing. But you at least get a guy that if KJ goes out, because let's be honest, the way KJ plays, a lot of times he's going to get banged up a little bit, may have to have a spell for a play or two. So you have somebody that at least has some experience, an older player that has some athleticism to go along with it. And then you add in Malachi Singleton as the true freshman into the mix too. You improved in the quarterback room. And that's really what the transfer portal needs to be always about when it comes to adding some players. Are you better at that position than what you were at the end of the season? And right now, and this is all assuming that it all goes according to plan, with KJ Jefferson, Jacolby Criswell, and Malachi Singleton, you are substantially better at the quarterback position than you were last year. So, big get. And again, I think it's great that Criswell gets to come home. He wasn't recruited as highly over when he was in Morrilton, because Chandler Morris was the quarterback that Arkansas committed under Chad Morris. So, gosh, what a time that was. But also, Arkansas got another big commitment, and it said big as in far as size goes for sure. Andrew Armstrong, who was the wide receiver out of Texas A&M Commerce. He took an official visit this past weekend, and he really loved it. In fact, he said, quote, and this is according to hogsports.com, says, "I came to Arkansas to win. I came to Arkansas just because the coaches made me feel like it's home. I'm all the way in Dallas, so that's like 5 hours or something like that. I feel like I'm being home here. Just the teammates and the players, they were very honest about everything. I was asking all of them questions. Like I said, facilities, the food, everything." So he really liked Arkansas and really fell in love. He's 6'6", 189. So very tall wide receiver, but had a great year at Texas A&M Commerce. And a lot of you may see like that stat, be like, okay, great. They got a wide receiver from some FCS or Division II school. Wow. Okay. What's the big deal about that? Well, as I always say to people, when it comes to, if you want to know how good of a player it is, or at least get an idea of how good they are, you look at who else have offered him, who else wanted him. And Armstrong had offers to Missouri, Miami, Wisconsin, Colorado, Louisville, NC State, Utah, Virginia Tech, Washington State, Syracuse, Indiana, Purdue, Kansas, Western Kentucky, and Louisiana Tech, North Texas, and Sam Houston State. So there were a lot of schools that wanted him, and there were a lot of Power 5 schools that wanted him. Now, is Armstrong as highly decorated as maybe what the Jaden Hazelwood last year? No, but you got a big-bodied 6'6" guy who apparently was wanted by a lot of different other Power 5 schools, and you desperately need wide receivers this upcoming year because it looks pretty thin there right now. So that's huge for Arkansas to get that player and to get him on campus, and especially where he continues to say things that you've heard from a lot of different players as far as feeling at home and making them feel welcome whenever Sam Pittman's there. You know, all those things, it just works out perfectly. So that's another nice get for Arkansas. And, you know, you're adding to the mix of getting guys in there that have been able to address some of the needs. In fact, he was Armstrong was one of the nation's top transfer targets, where he had over 1,000 yards receiving, 13 touchdowns on 62 receptions. So good to see him be a part of it now too. So you're just keep adding guys into the mix, and we'll see about a few other ones too. So far, you got 3 commitments with Criswell Armstrong and Joshua Braun. You have some other guys that took visits that you're waiting to hear the word on to them. Obviously, Gavin Holmes, Eric Rogers, Kendarian Ray, Tumis Adile. Hopefully I'm getting that right. Dorian Singer, Kyrie Jackson. Those are all guys that Arkansas has officially offered into the portal. And we'll see if any of them end up calling Arkansas home. And it's still ever moving. So far, Arkansas has addressed an offensive line need, a quarterback need, and a wide receiver need. Hopefully they keep going there. So the next question becomes as far as the coaching side of things and the defensive coordinator, which first off, I saw this happen over the weekend too. And this was really sad. At least I thought it was sad for Arkansas if it ends up being true for sure. And it was the deal where Michael Schur, who is the linebacker coach for Arkansas, looks like he might be going to UNLV to join Barry Odom, which we haven't found that out just yet. It's not official, but it was being reported that way, which would be a really big bummer because I think Michael Schur has done such a good job, incredible job at coaching linebackers. I mean, Arkansas at like not only coaching guys like Grant Morgan and Hayden Henry and Bumper Poole, but then adding in a guy like Drew Sanders, which was huge. Chris Paul looks the part, looks really good. So the linebackers have been probably the most consistent part of the defense since Sam Pittman's been there. And I think Michael Schur is a big reason for that. So that'll be a huge loss if he ends up going. Again, nothing official, at least at the time of this recording. But if that ends up happening, then that's going to be pretty disappointing. But they're having to figure out as far as, you know, what they do with the defensive coordinator position. And over the weekend, too, there's a lot of reports of guys coming out. But apparently former Baylor defensive coordinator Ron Roberts was one that was really into the mix. And he was a guy that had just gotten fired from Baylor, actually, and really did not have a great defense this past season. But 2 years ago was pivotal under Dave Aranda to be making Baylor one of the best defenses in the country as far as top 10 in scoring. And did a really good job. But this past year, it wasn't good. Well, that he was into the mix. Well, apparently, again, according to reports, this is nothing official yet, at least that I've seen, but Ron Roberts is expected to become the new defensive coordinator at Auburn. So it looks like Arkansas missed out on him. But a lot of people that I saw, especially for Arkansas, were like, we didn't want him. We did not want him at all. His defense was terrible last year. And, there's been other guys into the mix, like a Trey Scott, and the defensive line coach out of Georgia. People have been all about him and, just what they want him instead. Like, everyone's got who they want and what they look for and everything. Like, I understand that. I get it. But here's my thing when it comes to the defensive coordinator position. And I think I said this last week on the podcast, and I'm going to say it again. I don't know if Ron Roberts would have been great or not. I don't know if Trey Scott would be great or not. I don't know if any of these coaches that have been reported to be in the mix of Arkansas football being defensive coordinators would be great or not. I have no idea. And honestly, most of you don't either. Be honest. Like, if a guy got fired from Baylor this past year for having a bad defense or for whatever reason, bumping heads with the coaches, however it was, but yet 2 years ago, he had one of the best defenses in the country, I'm not going to sit there and only take, well, this past year, the most recent year was when it was horrible, so therefore he's horrible. I don't buy that. Again, defense, more than anything, is not about system. It's not about schematics. It's important, but it's not everything. What is everything is recruiting. Getting the best players, the pro players on your team. That's what it's about. And then the rest of it comes with it. And I know it sounds cliche to say that it's all about recruiting, because it's like, well, yeah, everything's about recruiting. No, because I think at least offensively, you can have an incredible scheme, but not have necessarily a bunch of pro players on that team and still be highly successful. Offense, you can figure that out, because defense, it's about reaction. It's a reactionary thing. And when you have pro players that are great at having great reactions and making split-second decisions, then you're going to be a great defense no matter what. You'll put them in place. You'll figure out some ways to make it work. But that's what Arkansas needs. And when we figure out who ends up being the defensive coordinator for Arkansas, I'm not going to look at what they did last season and look at stats and numbers and be able to either praise them or like execute them and just say, well, it's one way or the other. It's either really great or really bad. I don't know about how it's going to work with Arkansas. I've said before, oh, well, get the guy from Georgia because look how great their defenses are. Yeah, you know why their defenses are great? Because they have 5-star talent across the board. All right? I mean, you got to get somebody that can be able to work with great players at Arkansas. Like, hopefully they'll recruit great players. But you also have to live in a reality where you're not going to have the talent that Georgia does or Bama or LSU. Like, you're just not going to do that. So get somebody that can do great things with a few great players and make it work. That's how you be successful at Arkansas defensively. And that's what they need to focus on. That's what they need to do. So everybody that just freaks out and says, oh, this guy's trash, or no, I want this guy because look at what he did at this other major Power 5 school, chill. Let's see how they recruit. Recruiting is everything. And from what I understand, if Auburn ends up hiring this guy, he's a great recruiter. That's what I understand. I don't know. I guess we'll see. But there's people that are all about one way or the other. Just wait and see how it plays out. And then we can make our judgments after that. Arkansas, we know, has a lot of great things going on for them in football and in basketball. And we'll talk about especially the basketball side of things here in just a second. But folks, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs help you find the right people for your team faster. I know a lot of people and people I went to school with, that I graduated with, that have started their own businesses or have run their own businesses and are being very successful at it. Well, one of the things that they always say is that they're only as good as the people that they hire, and LinkedIn Jobs have helped them hire the best qualified candidates, and it's going to help you as well. You just head over to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That helps you find the candidates that you want to talk to faster. Again, head over to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so continuing on with the Locked On Razorbacks podcast, Arkansas basketball was able to take care of business against Oklahoma over there in Tulsa, a little revenge game from last year. And we got a first look at seeing what Arkansas could do in the absence of Trevin Brazile. As we know, he's out for the season. And I know that Arkansas's had some really good performances. I know that they've done a really good job in certain games and in certain spells and everything. But as far as this season goes, that game against Oklahoma, that win against Oklahoma may have been the most satisfying win for me so far this year. And it had some to do with Trevin Brazile being out, because one of the biggest questions was about this team. How are they going to look when one of their key proponents of the team is out for the season? Well, we got a chance to see it. So I was impressed by that. But the other thing that I was really impressed by is that Oklahoma started shooting from the field about as great as you would ever see. I think at one point in time, they were like 13 of 15 from the field, and that included threes. I mean, they were just killing it. And so I was like, man, this is just going to be one of those days when Oklahoma can't miss. And Arkansas had a pretty good shooting first half too. But the main difference that ended up playing a huge role in this game for Arkansas is their defense and the way that they were able to come out and be aggressive and stay aggressive. And most importantly, the shot selection. This, to me, was the best game Arkansas had played so far this year, with incredible shot selection. Arkansas from the game shot nearly 60% from the field. They shot 33% from three-point land and shot 73% from the free throw line. They had 19 assists and only 9 turnovers. So that's incredible. They had 10 steals in this game. Incredible. 5 block shots. Incredible. They tightened the defense, got to Oklahoma to commit 15 turnovers in this game, and that ended up being the difference in it. Ricky Council played all 40 minutes in this game and has another incredible performance. 26 points out of Ricky Council with 5 assists, only 1 turnover, as well as 2 rebounds and a steal. So an incredible performance by him. Jordan Walsh looked great too. Like, I know he finished with 12 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, and no turnovers, but he defensively especially was causing a lot of problems. And I think this was one of his best games. 2 of 5 from three-point land too. So he made half of Arkansas's threes. He had a great performance. So him, I still have been loving what Mekhi Mitchell has been doing. If he can just find the way to continue to be consistent with that regard, he put some moves. He put some big time moves on old Groves down low, and it was causing him some problems. He had 10 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, and 2 blocks in 21 minutes of play. Incredible. Keep that up, Mekhi Mitchell. You deserve that starting role, and it seems like it's a tradition now where he scores the first basket of every game, which is great. I mean, but I love what he's bringing to the table, and he's not making a whole lot of mistakes. He only committed 2 fouls, and again, no turnovers. Very smart player, and hopefully he continues to improve. So, yeah, those guys. Can't forget Nick Smith Jr., of course, bringing in 21 points out of him. It goes 8 of 16 from the field, also has 2 rebounds, an assist, and 1 steal. So a great game out of him. Anthony Black did have a lot of turnovers, but again, that's kind of sometimes what you can say. Him and Council both had 5 turnovers apiece. So you need to limit, 5 turnovers for Black, only 1 for Nick Smith. But they did have 5 assists to go with those 5 turnovers. Anthony Black had 8 points, was perfect from the field, 4-4 from shooting, 4 rebounds, and played nearly 36 minutes. So he's just a guy that's not going to go out there and he's not going to put up a lot of points, but he's just going to be great at defense and great at providing energy and all of that stuff too. So great game out of those guys, and of those individual players. Devo Davis came in, and Devo did some nice things too, was very big on that hustle play at the end of the half. But 1 of 4 shooting from the field for Devo. That's perfect. I don't think most people want him shooting at a high volume, but getting some rebounds, some assists, some steals, being a flurry guy on defense, that's great too. Kamani Johnson came in, had 5 points, 5 rebounds, an assist and a steal, and a block shot. So he played really good. So just overall, I feel like Arkansas just had a great game. A great game from beginning to end. They stepped on the throat. They finished them off. Their defense stepped up, and they beat an Oklahoma team, which I know was very personal to guys like Kamani Johnson and Devo, to beat those guys after what happened last year. So now Arkansas moves on to 9-1, and they got a few non-conference games left. I know they have to travel to play Bradley here in North Little Rock. So that'll be an interesting game to see how that plays out. But I really liked what I saw. Hopefully they continue to get great. And I love how Anthony Black, Jordan Walsh, and also Ricky Council in the press conference afterwards kind of said that, hey, they wanted to dedicate the rest of the season to playing for TB and Trevin Brazile. So that was a really cool moment. And also them talking about the Razorback fans I tried to find the video of it, but I couldn't cut in time. But either way, Ricky Council basically said that they could play a game in Africa and Hog fans would show up. So it's cool to hear that, and cool to see that the Hog fans are really showing out. And they showed out there in Tulsa, as once again, it was overwhelmingly Razorback fans there. So just cool moments, cool things that are going on for Razorback basketball, and hopefully they keep the job up, because I really like what I'm seeing. And I want to address something too real quick before we move on. But some people were coming at me on Twitter that said that I had said in a previous podcast that the season's over, this team's not going to be as good, and not going to be able to go to a Final Four or anything without Trevin Brazile. And I want to clarify that. I never said that. I was looking at the good parts and the bad parts, the doomsday scenario and the silver linings of that situation. I looked at both sides, and I said that the bad situation, the worst case scenario, is that this does prevent Arkansas from moving forward. I said the silver linings, though, however, is that you have a coach that's able to manage a roster better than anybody in Eric Musselman. And as long as he's managing the roster, you got to feel really good about your chances of always going far into the NCAA tournament. So I wanted to clarify that. It was not about Trevin Brazile, because he's gone, the season's over. It's not that at all. I think this team is going to continue to grow, continue to get better, and I think Eric Musselman always does a really good job of coaching them up. But once SEC play gets here, it's going to get real. So let's see how that plays out too. Folks, I got to tell you about SimpliSafe. We know that SimpliSafe, especially here on Locked On Razorbacks, is always a way of making us feel safe whenever we're at home or away from home. We believe here, at least on this podcast, that you and your family should always feel safe, especially over the holidays. So this season, give yourself and your family the gift of peace and protection with the #1 rated security system, SimpliSafe. And as of right now, SimpliSafe is offering all of you Locked On Razorbacks podcast listeners 40% off of a new security system. Don't put it off. Here's why I love it. No matter what happens, no matter when I'm gone, no matter when I'm at home, I feel protected. I feel protected where all my stuff is safe for me, where I know that it's going to be in good hands. Got my dog Rowdy, as wonderful as he is. He's not exactly the most security dog ever. He's mainly scared of things, but that's okay, because SimpliSafe takes care of it for me anyways. So that's why I love it. I love having it. I feel safe whether I'm just at home in bed sleeping, or whether I'm gone to work, gone on vacation, traveling for the holidays. No matter what it is, I feel great with SimpliSafe. They use all the highest technology you could possibly have. They have 24/7 professional monitoring agents that's able to check you out every day and make sure that everything's going good. It also has advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, as well as HD security cameras inside and out. So there's no better way to be protected this holiday season. So don't miss your chance to save big on my favorite security system. So get 40% off any new system at simplisafe.com/lockedoncollege. That's SimpliSafe, SimpliSafe.com/lockedoncollege. There's no safe like SimpliSafe.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so final segment here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. This is kind of a sad thing, and I know we talk mainly about the Razorbacks on this podcast, and but as my sign back there and says, there was some really sad news that happened just yesterday with Mike Leach, the Mississippi State head coach for football, where he suffered a personal health issue and was taken to the hospital. That was originally the report yesterday. It didn't go into many details as far as the statement being released by Mississippi State. Just said that he had a personal health issue at his home earlier. It led him to being transferred to the University of Mississippi Medical Center in Jacksonville by an ambulance. No one knows the condition at this time, no comment, but thoughts and prayers are with Mike and Sharon and their family and all of that, which you see that. And of course you're like, oh, wow, that seems pretty scary. Like, what's going on? I hope everything's okay. Well, then reports started coming out more and more that it was a lot more serious than what people were anticipating, or maybe what people were hoping for. In fact, it was so serious, we don't know the extent and details other than what people are saying or what people are throwing around, which I never want to speculate as far as something like that goes, especially when dealing with somebody's health condition. But from people that are into the know and people that cover Mississippi State football, they said it's extremely serious and something that's extremely critical. And, we don't know, what the significance is as far as time. We don't know, what's the chances. Like, we don't know a lot of things about this. So I just don't want to speculate, but just basing off the people that know and saying how serious it is, Thoughts and prayers for sure go to Mike Leach. We get very competitive here in the SEC. We like to talk a lot of trash, and Mike Leach has been one of those coaches that I've always found extremely entertaining, and I've always kind of respected in the way because he's always taken over jobs at schools that, don't have the highest level of recruiting, maybe not the most money, whatever it may be. And he takes them and makes them immediately competitive year in and year out. He did it with Texas Tech there in Big 12 country. He also did it with Washington State up there in the Pac-12, and he's done it with Mississippi State as well. So he's been a guy that's been entertaining and maybe very unorthodox, but is always successful no matter where he goes. And so apparently he's been dealing with some health issues this year, and people kind of knew that, but something happened to where it became a much more serious thing. So I hate to see that. And I really hope that everything ends up being okay for Mike Leach. I've said before, I like him. I think I respect him as a coach, and I respect his entertainment value. And I think that he's been great for the game of college football. And he's a guy that it's kind of hard to hate him. Like it really is. Yes, he's weird at times. He says weird things, but you can't hate on him. You can't ever just say, have the same disdain towards him like you may other coaches in the SEC, like, or Nick Saban, like a Lane Kiffin or Jimbo Fisher, or anything like that. He's just never been that type of guy that has a bunch of people turn on him. So prayers up for him and his family. Hopefully it all goes well and all ends up being okay for him, but definitely a serious situation that the Mississippi State football family and Leach and his family find themselves in. So hopefully it all goes well, and thoughts and prayers to them during this time. Appreciate everybody listening into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at BuzzJohnNabors for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have. We'll keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel tomorrow afternoon. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you then.